Naz, thank you so much for joining us today. Why is it so important for you to talk about this?
World Diabetes Day tomorrow, 14th of November. I don't make a huge thing of telling people that I have got it, but if people ask, obviously that's a subject that's quite sort of, well, it's very important to me, given that I have the condition. But yeah, type 1 diabetes gets a bit of a bad rep, and I just feel like, especially for it being like more of a juvenile condition, it's very important for like the kids who have it or parents who've got children who've been diagnosed that they get a bit of a visual of that things will be all right. It's a very big shock to your life and to everything that goes on, but just a bit of like it's all right. There's a few misconceptions about it, but it shouldn't really change anything about what you want to do in life.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in the world of sport, it's not something which is all too common to come across. So I suppose for someone like you, it's a good chance to just raise a bit of awareness about it.
Yeah, I think there's still a bit of a stigma about it in regards of, so like you've probably seen me wearing my sensor that's on my arm, and I wear it in games where it's fit and it's not been knocked off or pulled off or whatever. And I get quite a lot of questions about that. A lot of people are not sure what it is, and there is, like I say, a little bit of a stigma to let people know that you've got it. Obviously, the sporting environment, it's very cutthroat. It's vying for the job of someone else all the time, pretty much. And some people would rather hide it away rather than letting people know that you've got something that needs to be monitored or something that you're dealing with away from what they can normally see. So yeah, it's not common, but I've been getting more and more people that ask questions and bump into you and, oh, I know someone who's got type 1 or I've got it, or family members more often than not. So it's been really nice, and it's just making people comfortable to actually, let people know you've got something going on, and being open to talk about it, because it's not anything to be ashamed of.
And as a sportsman, does it affect much of your day-to-day life?
Yeah, it can do. This morning we had to have a quick pit stop at services so I could go and get a drink, because for whatever reason this morning my body just decided, right, you're gonna have a low sugar. So yeah, it can have a big effect. Like that's not every day, but yeah, some days it doesn't really make any sense, whether it's the weather, what you've eaten the day before, what you did the day before, what you've had in the morning. Like there's all sorts of things that can have an impact on it. As I say, this morning, no real dramas, just nipped in, got a Lucozade and cracked on. But yeah, it's a daily thing. You got to be aware of what's happening all the time, the food you're eating, when you're eating it, how to measure your insulin levels and stuff that you're taking in your injections. So a lot to go on, but really, if you can be quite relaxed with it, and we're quite regimented, that does help quite a lot.
I suppose overall it's just good, like to have people around you who you can let know. For instance, the lads who you went in with today, all you needed to do was to say, "Quick, lads, let me stop for a few minutes," and have that support around you.
Yeah, so when I was diagnosed, there was quite a close knit community sort of around type 1 diabetes, and there still is that, and that's growing down there, and that's brilliant to see. But that support has kind of always followed me, because, as I say, if people ask me, I will explain things. I will tell them what's going on. As long as people are aware, it makes it so much easier. Like whether they were panicking this morning or not, I'm not sure. But I was like, look, if we can nip in there, I'll go get a drink. I'll be sound. And then they're not panicking either about, oh, like, I've got killed now, sort of thing. But yeah, no, I've got support everywhere I've been, and I think it is just from that being upfront and open about it, and just telling people, look, if this happens, I need this. If this happens, I need that. And if you're not sure, just ask me. I'll probably have a good guess at the answer.
And taking you back right to the start of your journey, how did you get diagnosed? Was it something which was young, or like you say, actually?
No, mate, I was 27 when I found out. So from speaking to the consultants after being diagnosed, they reckon that I was probably on a slow path down towards that from maybe 2-3 years before that. So sort of early to mid 20s. Nothing that I ever really picked up on or thought anything of. It was when I'd gone to Plymouth. I'd had an ankle surgery in the previous season at Rochdale, which the recovery from that wasn't straightforward, and it didn't really make sense to me at the time. And I was toying with actually retiring. So thankfully, I carried on and got the proper diagnosis, because I don't think I'd ever forgiven myself. But when I was down there, I was constantly fatigued. I was thirsty all the time, having really bad sugar cravings. And the main thing that was sort of out of the blue for me more than anything was after a game, sort of 45 minutes after, I'd get really severe cramping in pretty much every muscle like that you could think of. And I'd never had that before, and that was really bizarre. Like leaving the ground to go back to where I was staying was like a 5 minute drive, and having to pull over the car because I can't last that without both quads, hamstrings cramping up. Like, it's not the safest thing to do is driving a car when you're in that condition. Sitting in the rain outside my flat because I couldn't get upstairs to get in. That was the big concern for me, because it just didn't add up. This went on for about 3 months of me asking questions about what I was dealing with and getting sort of simple responses of just keep an eye on it, track what you're doing here before a game and there, and did all that. And in the end, we were doing hydration tests, and my scores went from perfectly fine to severely, like, abnormal, like you shouldn't be training kind of scores. But I was actually passing like a crystal clear sample, so didn't make any sense whatsoever. In the end, the sports scientist at the time, while the doctor was in, said, "Can you just have a look at this for me, because it's kind of sort of doing both our heads in at this point." He did a quick test with almost like a litmus paper type thing. There's sugar in the urine. He said it's one of two things: either it's a severe water infection or he's diabetic. I had bloods the day after, played the game on the Saturday, was in the hospital on the Monday. You're diabetic, your scores were X, Y, and Z. You're going to have to start injecting yourself. And then the fun began. So, yeah, a weird one, but once that diagnosis was made, everything was sort of crystal clear. Like, in that period up to being diagnosed, I lost, like, right at the end, it was probably a week before they checked it. We'd done body fat testing again, and over the previous 5 weeks, I think it was, I'd lost 5 kilos and 2% body fat, which, given the amount of sugary things I was eating due to the cravings I was having, didn't really make any sense. And then, as I say, after the diagnosis, it all becomes clear. Like, my wife back at home was panicking about me. She suddenly relaxed. And then the lads start telling me they thought I'd been looking gaunt and whatever else. So, yeah, it all made sense, and I was sort of back to be myself after what felt like a long, long time. And I've been happier and healthier in all aspects of what I can do ever since, mate. So it's been a real blessing for me, really.
Yeah, I think it's great to see that a positive's come out of it. From when we've spoken to it before, it's been like, at that point of your career, there were a few injuries, and obviously that was also hurting the rehab quite a bit. So it was almost like you say there, a blessing to give your career a 2.0 almost.
Yeah, it's kind of like, right, we draw a line here and we move on from here. Those last couple of years, however long it had been, you've been hampered by something, but that makes sense now. Like, mentally, there's a bit of clarity that, all right, it wasn't just I couldn't do it anymore. There was something that was actually impacting me. So, yeah, it sounds weird because I've got a lifelong condition, but I'm happy that I found out, because I can deal with that. And that responsibility now goes to me, which is better than it being on, my kids or whatever at the minute. So, yeah, I'm happy it happened to me at the time it did. And, yeah, I don't think I've really looked back too much.
Yeah, I suppose overall it sounds like once the diagnosis come through, it's just a better quality of life now.
Yeah, because I understand the things that work for me and the things that don't. And as I say, we're quite regimented with timings and schedules and stuff, and that was a big help. The community I had down there at the time was really helpful. And then it sort of middling in this period has been the pandemic, where I was able to go home and I could try things. I'm in a safe environment. I can try fasted workouts, or I can try different foods to see what they do. I can try different combinations of things and how I treat different scenarios. So like, yeah, I've weirdly enjoyed sort of being an experiment to myself.
And overall, if you could give some advice to someone who's maybe newly diagnosed or has had it for a while, what would that advice be from you?
Um, there are going to be ups and downs. It's, I know you see a lot of people, if you see anything about it online, the people who've got the condition talk about it being a full-time job, which it is. And it can be quite taxing, like emotionally and physically. But I think if you learn to sort of take the condition with you rather than it seeing it as a burden and a problem, you've got to do it. So you might as well take an interest, try things out. I spoke last year at the hospital, I had like the clinic with all the children come in, and I spoke there about, if you're worried about going to sport events or to a new environment that you've not been to before, just make sure you have everything to deal with the scenarios that might come up, whether you're going to go with a high sugar or a low. Just have those things with you and someone with you as well that can sort of back you up, and just build your confidence that way. Like I say, I was lucky enough, I had the pandemic and I fully used that at home doing workouts and stuff to try and figure out as much as I could so that when I came back to training full time, I understood a little bit better what to do when and how to get on with things. And it is a bit of trial and error and you will get it wrong. But if you persistent with it and you stick to what you know about yourself and how you respond, I think you'll be able to do whatever you want to do.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure, sir.